Hello, welcome to part 4 of my high-end computer build, which is high-end AMD processor and a very high-end NVIDIA graphics card. So stay tuned for an exciting part. In here we're going to complete the actual hardware build and you're going to see a running computer. Okay, as is usual the case, it takes a while to get these pumps ready, or any kind of cooler for a motherboard. So I'm going to do that right now outside of the case. Make sure I got it all straight. Took me a while to figure this out, but these are the pieces you need. These little double angle brackets, these two little clips. By the way, these tighten and they actually connect to the existing AMD cooler bracket. So there's no reason to change that. This will connect right up to it. And these 4 small screws, which were buried in another bag. And the way this goes on, you take one of these, you put it like this, you take a screw, and we're ready to go. We'll just pull this little, make sure you peel this little piece of plastic off of here. It actually has a little note on it warning you to take that off if you look at it carefully enough. And that takes care of that. Now time to go ahead and populate the case. Let me take the side panel off. And I'll lay it down onto here. Like this. Okay, the first thing we install in the case is the motherboard shield. Always take a look at it very carefully and make sure that there's no wildly bent out of shape little tabs, these little metal tabs here. Just take a quick look and make sure that they all seem reasonable. And make sure you don't press on those as you're installing it. Make sure that the I/O part for the audio is toward the bottom of the case, and then you reach in here and you try to snap it all together. Sometimes this can be a little bit challenging depending on the fit between the various components of the case and the shield. Sometimes you could just get it in there, sometimes you can't. Like now. Again, try not to press those fingers, whatever you do. There we go. And that happens too. You snap one in and the other one snaps out. You got to make sure all four corners are in. Now, if you've noticed, I tied back the various cables so I have a nice clear access to put the motherboard in place. Okay. Now, one other thing I should mention, the motherboard screws that came with this case, they have separate washers. So that's going to be a challenge if you want to put the washers on it. Chances are you don't need it, but it probably would give a little more secure fit. If you have a magnetic screwdriver and it's strong enough, it should hold both. So you put the screwdriver in here, it should hold both the washer and the screw. Let's see. And it does. So that's how I'm going to do it. Okay, we got the motherboard handled with extreme care, oriented right so that the shield part is there, and you always find that it's better to tip it in at a little bit of an angle as you come into the I/O area here. Get those into the shield first. Check, make sure the back that it looks good. Be careful as you line these up and make sure none of the fingers stick out into where the connectors are. So be very aware of those little fingers, those little stainless steel fingers as you line everything up and then push it in. And one thing to take note of is there are 9 screws altogether that hold the motherboard in. But the one that's right in the center group of 3, the center one, you don't put a screw there. This case provides a little standoff that goes into that. So you push in to the I/O shield until that little knob comes up right inside of there. See that? That little knob that comes up. So there's no screw that goes in there. You only need 8 screws to hold it in. Always double check to make sure that the I/O shield, there's no fingers stuck in the front of it. And now we can start putting the motherboard screws in. I like to start in the back because you have to push it forward a little bit sometimes. Don't tighten them all the way down, just get them started. And we're done. Now I'd like to start doing the power cables, but I start with the hardest one first, which is not that bad in this case, the 12 volts for the CPU. We have 2 cables we got to put in there, one an entire one and one only half of it. So let me prepare those cables to start with. So what I've done is I've split one of them, so it's only got a 4, and this other 4 I'm going to tie out of the way. So it'll be these 8 and these 4 because that's what the motherboard down here requires. Got to have them oriented right, and then we just push them in. A lot more room in this case than others I've worked with. A lot of times I have to do it on the motherboard before I put them in. This one I do not. This one I can just snap them right in there with plenty of room for my hand. And I'll tie these back later when I finish the cable management. Now for the main power connector, the 24 pin over here. Make sure it's oriented right. You gotta have the clip on that side as the little tab on the motherboard. So we gotta get it in this way until we hear it snap. I always like to double check and look on the very end of it and make sure it's all the way down, which it is. Okay, now time for the cooler, the AIO in this case. I've already taken the liberty off camera of putting the fans on. Be careful because there is a little arrow here. I don't know if it's visible on the video or not, but there's a little arrow here that says the direction that the air will blow. I want these fans to blow out. Since this is going to be at the very top of the case, the radiator, I want the air to blow that way. So that's the way I put the fans. And you got these extra long screws that came with the kit that you got to use to put the fans on. It'll go in this way. Put this out of the way so it doesn't bump into the motherboard like that. It's going to go in just like that. I've also arranged it so where the cables coming out of the fan are near a hole that I want them to go through. So that was an important consideration there as well. I've got these small screws that have to be used to hold the radiator in place. And I'll go ahead and start installing it. There's 8 screws to hold this in place. I suggest you use all 8. That'll make it a lot more secure. The first 2 are on, and the rest should be pretty straightforward. As usual, I do not tighten them up until I have them all in. Just barely. I like to actually hold the shaft of the screwdriver. When I'm turning screws, I don't want to over tighten. Assuming you have a long enough shaft. That way you get them just right. If you can't turn it on the shaft, then you're tight enough. Just a trick I've learned from my father years ago, and the job is done. Okay, I'm going to clean the CPU one more time. I'm sure that I touched it since I last worked with it. I have here the 99% isopropyl alcohol. Put some in a paper towel, not over the motherboard, and then I'll start scrubbing this thing. I'll do the same thing to the pump. I will take the pump, I will pull that little sticker that they have off. Here's the pump. There's a little sticker on here with a little tab here that I can catch it. And then I will clean this as well. At the very minimum, there's the gook from the stickum that's on there. I'll give it a nice polish job and make sure that we're good. I'll put this aside, let everything dry for a couple of minutes. I realized that once I put the pump on, I'd have difficulty getting to those fan headers for the 2 fans on the motherboard. So what I've done is I put them in now before I put the pump on. So I put the left one on the CPU fan connector and the right one on the CPU fan option. So it does allow for 2 fans on the cooler. And now I'm ready to start mounting the pump. Now the cooler did come with some thermal paste, but I'm going to use a better one. Recommended by a real friend of the channel. This Arctic MX4 seems to be the one that everybody is having good luck with, and so far it hasn't failed me. So that's what we're going to put on here. So I'll put the standard pea-size droplet of thermal paste on there. And then we can take the pump, make sure the tubing is oriented properly. Gonna have to go like this. Then I've got to catch these little hooks on here and get them started. Have to put those out of the way later. And they both seem hooked on at this point. Just got to tighten them up. I didn't even need a screwdriver. I just sit them by hand and they seem to be nice and snug. That's good enough. Let me put the RGB cable out of the way. I'm going to feed this one back into the back where I fed the other cables from the fans, because all the RGB cable management is going to take place back there. And then the pump itself will actually go, according to this, it's the right-hand one. And now I just need to do some cable management, and I'm ready to proceed to the next step. Now I have the fans, the RGB fans, ARGB in this case, programmable. I have 4 of them that are going in, 1 here in the back, blowing air out, and the other 3 will be actually in the front, blowing air in. If you can't find the arrow, which sometimes is hard to find, the alternative is to realize that wherever you have the support bracket for the fan, That's where the air comes out of, basically where the label is too on this side. So you got the support. The part that's more exposed, that's what sucks the air in. Make sure we orient it so that the cables are going to go exactly where we want them to go. As always, don't tighten them all the way down until you got all 4 of them in. This rear one will go in the first case fan. So we're going to plug this fan into the rear case fan position here. This is the best time to do this. Try to do this on the video cards in there. It's very difficult. Okay, now to put the front fans on, I'll have to start off by pulling off this front cover. And I'll take off the filter. So that's done. I actually just took a run to Micro Center. I had to buy this splitter. All I needed was 1 to 3, but all they had was a 1 to 5 for the ARGB. So I'm gonna have to use that to help organize these cables. But I almost forgot, I have to put the 1 terabyte 2.5-inch SSD in. So I'm just gonna install it over here, right onto this one. Okay, so the case comes with these little screws just for SSDs like this. So I can mount them on here. Make sure you remove the little tag here to expose the connectors. I want them going to the bottom. Okay, so I got the SATA power connector. Come up underneath here. I believe this is where the connector is at. There we go. And I got SATA data. I've already plugged it in on the front to what I believe is SATA 2, which is okay for now. I'm going to bring that down over here and plug that up underneath here. It's snapped in place. So now I just got a bunch of cable dressing to do, and in particular wiring up all of these various connectors. You know what, I think I'm going to go get something that might help me out with this, because it's looks like it's a pretty big job right now to try to do all that cabling. Plus I got this new thing here and everything else. Let me go get it. Okay, I got my magic wand. Let me see if this works again. Okay, abracadabra. Wow, that worked again. I can't believe it. I gotta use this on my YouTube management page. Get some subscriptions going here. That could have taken me, just a guess, 3 hours worth of work, but magic wand worked. The real test is, will the back go on? Let me try that. If I come in here and I put this in, closed. Okay, I guess now is the real test. Well, I got to put the video card in first. What am I doing? I do not have a video card in here. Let me put it down and install the video card. Okay, here's the video card, 3080. Let me take off these protectors here. Here's the PCI protector. It looks like I got to remove these two. That one and that one. Okay, here we go. Let me get it in place. It's down. It's in. Okay, let me lock it down. I always put both screws back just to give it a little extra security here. Looks neater too. Then I've got to put the power on it, PCI power. The magic wand got them in the right position. I just need to bend them into place, come around. So it's good to join them together. It'll work out much better that way. Like that. I believe that's locked into place now. Let me do the other one. Join them together again first. Get it around, give it a little bit of persuasion, and get it in here. There we go, make sure it locks into place. Now once I get my white tie wraps, I'm going to use the magic wand again and get these tie wraps converted to ones that are a little less obvious. I'll leave it like that for now. I don't want to block the fan anyway, so it gives it plenty of room to breathe. Okay, now everything is installed. Let me go ahead, hook it up and power it on. Okay, let me turn the power supply on first. Well, I see the motherboard lights. That's a good sign. Now let me hit the power on switch, see what we get. Whoa! I have one fan out, so I must have a loose connection in the back somewhere. So let me go and check that. Oh, look at that. The magic wand must be losing some of its power. This one disconnected somehow. I may have to add another tie wrap in there just to be safe. Okay. Let's turn it around and take another shot at it. Let's turn the power supply on. Motherboard lights. Power on. There we go. Now we got them all. There we go. We're in the BIOS. Okay, I'm going to do a quick load of Windows on there, and not only the NVMe, but we've also got the Western Digital 1 terabyte. Looks good. I'm going to also upgrade the BIOS first, because the BIOS is outdated a little bit. Well, I almost forgot. Time for the tear. This one should be pretty easy because there's no screws that get in the way here. Hopefully it makes some sound. Let's see how it goes. Not much. Oh well. I think the video is still okay, right? Well, that completes part 4. The hardware build is done. What do you think? I think it's a pretty nifty looking computer. Much more RGB than I've ever put into a computer system before. And the white really makes it pop a little bit, don't you think? Anyway, I already know the computer works because we've seen it. I'm going to load it up with all the software that I want and test it out in the next video. So stay tuned for part 5, which we start doing the software and the testing. And we'll see how it performs. Not just against the standard benchmarks, but against the other computers that I built recently. So until the next time, take care and stay safe.